What is up, Los Angeles? I am here today with Brock Vierra, Rams insider from Sports Illustrated. I wanted to have him on the Rams Skinny, talk about a few things that are going on in the Rams universe. We've got Kyren Williams, a lot of discussion around him. We've got cornerback trade talk. We've got, what else do we have? We've got some offensive line intrigue and injuries. But before that, I just want to throw to my co-host here, Brock Vierra. How we doing today?
I'm doing good. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, no problem, man. So I met Brock out at Rams training camp. I believe it's his first year covering the team. He's doing a real bang-up job, I have to say. Love what he's putting out there, a real modern approach to kind of the written content side of things. And he's one of our insiders, one of our experts. So yeah, it's fantastic. But before we get to that conversation, we have to talk about our sponsor. Got to pay some bills here. Sleeper Fantasy. We're going to be talking about them all season long. We've got a special Rams LAFB code for you. If you put in $100, they're going to give you $100 to play with. What do you get to do with that money? You can use it for daily fantasy. You can pick from 2 to 8 players. They can go over under, and you can win some money. So it's a really good time. There's also a social aspect. You can meet new Rams fans. You can meet other fans. And then we got NHL. We got NBA coming. Probably some soccer. I don't know. Lots of stuff to go after. We got the Rams-Baltimore game. That should have some pretty interesting over-unders there for sure. But definitely go use this code RAMSLAFB. All one word, RAMSLAFB. Get up to $100. You put $5 in there, you get $5. Go all the way with 100. Either way helps us out. Thank you guys so much for playing Sleeper. Okay, Brock, you put a nice little article about Kyren Williams. Some of his teammates coming to his defense. Some other people out there on the Twitter universe not coming to his defense after a rough fumble. What's been on your mind about Kyren Williams? What have you been hearing? Is there going to be any changes to the running back room?
I anticipate zero changes to the running back room. Right now, the Rams operate at a 65-35 split. Of course, get changed based on various factors and things that happen throughout the course of the game. The phrase that the Rams love to use, of course, is flow of the game. Despite Williams' big-time fumble, Blake Corum didn't do himself any favors having a fumble on his own on a play that was simply, for lack of a better term, a lapse of concentration. At least with Williams' situation, it was at least a forced fumble instead of an inexcusable turnover, if we're being blunt about it. Because of that, and plus Williams' expanded role as a pass catcher and a blocker, something that we saw help the Rams and not only advance up the field on Thursday night, but also finally crack the code to the red zone. Like I mentioned, I don't expect any differences with the volumes of snaps that he's seen so far. When it comes to my take of Williams, I said it before, I said it again. The fumble was inexcusable, but at the same time, I will show grace to a guy who got punched in the face by a dude that's 300 pounds and Alfred Collins. I'm not saying anything about Collins. I think he was going for the football. Sometimes you're just trying to make a play, but just because you wear a helmet, that doesn't mean your jaw can't get rocked. Regardless, both hands need to be on the football, and that is something that he needs to clean up. Because it is Kyren Williams, of course, the narrative online and on Twitter is going to be highly negative, and understandably so. However, the Rams, their teammates, they all know that when push comes to shove, Williams has been the guy they've been able to rely on for the past 2 seasons. He's the guy that has ran them to the playoffs in back-to-back years with his 1,000-yard seasons, and then becoming a focal point of an offense that couldn't really move to end last season until they got into the playoffs. Plus, it's one thing if Williams fumbled and then didn't do anything else for the game. After that fumble, he responded big time with 2 huge catches in the fourth quarter on 3rd and 4th down to extend the drive, putting Josh Hardy into field goal range. And then in overtime, he had 2 big catches as well. So all that being said, that's the storyline of what's happening with the Rams. They remain confident in Williams. Williams himself is taking responsibility. I still feel confident in Williams. However, it's understandable why a lot of people don't and why they've been clamoring for some changes.
Yeah, it's such an interesting storyline to follow because in reality, this guy is the backbone of this team. You know, you look at success rate on the ground this year, the Rams have the best success rate. Now, when you look at EPA, that drops off by a lot. Now, EPA considers explosive runs and mistakes like fumbles into its calculations. But that ability to just pick up chunks, 4 or 5 yards, chunks of yardage like that has been so important to the offense. And you think about Blake Corum, and so far this year, he's looked like he has a bit more of explosion in his game than Kyren Williams, which was the huge knock coming out of last year. And it almost feels like Kyren is not even what he was last year in terms of explosion. Heading into the offseason after the draft, I was really excited to see what Jarquez Hunter, and I was really impressed with him at training camp, which is always a good advice of, let's not get too hyped up on one guy at training camp, because he looked explosive. He had the numbers to back it up, and he also looked really good in pass protection. But I saw today that it sounds like McVay isn't going to change anything, to your point, especially in regards to Hunter. When he was asked specifically about Hunter, it sounds like there's even some more reticence, whereas he talked about a guy like our guy Terrence Ferguson, second-round draft pick, that he's only going to see more touches, where with Hunter, it sounds like he's got some. Your take on that?
Yeah, you hit it. You said it correctly. And to illustrate your point more, I spoke to Blake Corum this season. First of all, phenomenal real estate mind, may I just add. But from a football standpoint, he said that the typical athlete quote, the game is slowing down for him. He's seeing things better. But I believe him. And when you look back at his track record at Michigan, what was he great at? Finding the holes before they develop, blasting through the holes with efficiency, and making the proper cut at the proper times. I think we're finally starting to see him do that at the NFL level. The problem is I have questions whether this Rams offense is built to accompany his type of running style, especially in the fact that they use wide receivers as primary blockers. Whereas when you look back at his collegiate career, it was a high tight end formation, where the only type of wide receiver was Colston Loveland, and that's a receiving tight end, of course. Maybe if you want to throw the Terrence Ferguson in there, as we mentioned him. When it comes to Jarquez Hunter, I've been asking that question all year long, and the response is, we love the way he's developing. He's not ready yet, and that's it. I don't exactly understand what the holdup to play him is. You and I both saw it at training camp, and I believe in 2 joint practices, where Hunter was the most physical player, arguably on the whole team, especially the offense. I mean, there is a mentality to him that is game changing. Dare I say, David Montgomery like. He's very quick. He's extremely good at exploding out his cuts, which he makes very nice cuts. I do have some questions about the vision, but that will develop in time. And I have no worries about that developing. But when you look at those critical red zone situations, especially within 10 yards, going all the way back to week 1, the Rams have lacked that power run game and that killer type of lock-in instinct that we have seen from McVay's teams in the past, where they can just hammer the ball in when they get into that critical area. We'll use the passing game to set up, but when it's time to play bully ball, let's go get it. There's many fingers we can point at, or things we can point at as why, but the fact that they don't have it and they refuse to go to the running back who I think could provide it, it's just concerning.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like McVay really wants to stick with this 60-30 split. And, you look at, committee running back rooms, which maybe this one is, maybe it's not. Maybe we're just looking at a bell cow situation. But you look at committee running back rooms in the past, and they just kind of go with the one who has the hot hand. And, I don't know if Blake Corum would have had the hot hand. I think Kyren Williams was looking pretty good against the Niners. But, just some fluidity within that. I would like to see that as well, including Hunter, including more Corum, when the timing is right, when situations are whoever's presenting, it seems like they've got the hot hand that day. Let's go in that direction. But I also think some of this has to do with this offensive line as well, which has been kind of a low hanging, kind of a low simmering question mark for me as to why. It doesn't look like it did in 2023 when Kevin Dotson first joined this team, and it just seemed like they were going to Kyren Williams and and Rob Havenstein and Kevin Dotson were taking the world by storm with Coleman Shelton at the center at that time. And it just hasn't had that kind of crispness and that ease of use like it did in that particular year. Now, there's been injuries all over the place. Rob Havenstein missed last week, gave up 9 pressures per PFF the week before, so obviously dealing with something in that week as well. Kevin Dotson's kind of been nicked up and dinged up here and there as well. Strange situation going on with Justin Dedich and Steve Avila. What are your thoughts? Are you in agreement that the offensive line is a bit of a problem, or where are you on that?
I mean, I don't know how you can say it's not, respectfully, because I mean, it's confusing to me because I get a chance to see these guys operate every day. I see the way that they work. I see the way they prepare, and then the product just never matches what you see in practice. And I don't understand why. Whether it's styles fit, miscommunication, or something else, maybe it's structurally within the offense. I don't know, but this offensive line at times has not shown up when they needed to in certain situations. I think the Tennessee game is kind of my biggest example. But in the same breath, there are times in where, especially in that fourth quarter, yes, it is helpful when you have a quarterback like Matthew Stafford who can read defenses well before the ball is snapped and is able to get the ball out quick and has those weapons to do so. But they're keeping it protected for the most part. Yeah, sometimes you may get hit, but the ball is coming out and they're moving up the field. And you really can't ask anything more when last season it was them not giving him that second that cost them everything against the Eagles. Moving on from that point when it comes to the offensive line, I think what we're seeing this year is a product of what's been building for the last 9. In the McVay era, when's the last time the Rams have spent true top draft capital on an offensive lineman? The only one that comes to mind, in my opinion, is Steve Avila, the second round pick, of course, in 2023. In that same sentence, you have to recognize that they did trade a bunch of their first round picks. Actually, all of them except Jared Verse during that time. So that factors in. But you look at Alert Jackson. He was a UDFA guy. You look at Justin Dedich, same situation. Kevin Dotson was a player with the Pittsburgh Steelers for 3 years, where they were able to take advantage of what was a bad situation for him and that in Pittsburgh, that he came to LA and has really shined. Rob Havenstein, they haven't had to worry about that position because he locked it down since the franchise back in St. Louis. But after a long time, when you go through all the guys that you develop and they start leaving, like when Coleman Shelton left, or Brian Allen, or Roger Saffold, if you want to go all the way back, or John Sullivan, or this or that, and then you just keep on replacing them, that continuity is not going to be there, and that ability for guys to grow within that system to eventually take their place like we see in Philadelphia is also not there. So that's kind of why we are where we are now. How the Rams approach their offensive line moving forward, especially with these 2 first-round picks in 2026, will define this next era of the McVay era and the Snead era as well. But back to my main point, this is what happens when you don't invest draft capital into your offensive line. And just to continue my point, I look at Andrew Whitworth and his succession plan. When you got Whitworth, he was incredible. Won Super Bowl with him, Rams legend, Hall of Famer, nothing more needs to be said. After that, you paid Joe Noteboom to take over. It didn't work out. It is what it is. But instead of investing in the draft, you got lucky with Alert Jackson. I think that they've just been using that same train of thought for every position, and now it's come back to haunt them.
Yeah. I haven't thought about the name Joe Noteboom in a few months now, so I'm glad you brought him back up because that was a near disaster. They bet big on Noteboom and then Aleric Jackson, and kind of there for a little bit. It didn't look like either one were going to be able to make the step up, and Avila, luckily for them, was able to do that. So that's a fantastic point of the construction of the offensive line, kind of getting lucky in a lot of ways with those succession plans, with the guys that they slotted in there. Coleman Shelton didn't have a great season last year. Nobody had a great season last year on the Chicago Bears offense. So, that was an interesting guy to bring back. I got to get your opinion on the Steve Avila situation where he's been on the injury report, doesn't seem to actually have an injury designation whatsoever, but maybe has been outplayed by Justin Dedich. Is that your sense, or are you taking it at face value?
I take it at face value. My sense is this: because it was a Thursday night game, even though Avila was practicing, it's one thing to practice; it's another thing to be practiced, be mentally ready, physically fit, and also understand exactly what you need to do against this type of opponent, especially a defensive line that does what they do with Robert Saleh structurally along within that front seven construction. That's why I think they went with Justin Deeds because he had the game reps. There wasn't going to be that rust on him. He understood exactly what the offense was doing. And to San Francisco's detriment, they didn't have that on paper entering the game, that top interior pass rusher that would give them pause regarding the Justin DJ Steve Avila argument. He spoke to McVay today, and what he was saying is that Avila is good to play this week, and he will get the start essentially as long as he takes care of business at practice. But let me say his exact quote on whether Avila is expected to start. If he plays and practices the way I believe he's capable of, yes. So essentially, if Steve Avila is Steve Avila, he'll play. And that's why I'm taking everything at face value.
Yeah, yeah. I may be putting on a little bit of a conspiracy hat with this one. Too much. We just recorded our injury update just a little bit ago, where I was just saying, nope, he doesn't have an injury. He got beat. So we'll see what happens. Obviously, to your point earlier, high draft pick, counting on him in a big way. So let's get him back healthy and back into the lineup and playing. I mean, probably the last big kind of question mark, big conversation piece coming out of this game was what's happening at cornerback. McVay kind of alluded. I saw Nate Atkins' tweet of The Athletic, that he's open, that they're open to adding cornerbacks after having lost Ahkello Witherspoon, after it seems like maybe Emmanuel Forbes hasn't taken that big step that a lot of people wanted to see him take. Is there a trade? Is there a free agent in this world? Are the Rams of F them picks back and going after a Jalen Ramsey 2.0?
I'm not sure that we've reached the F them picks era yet. Give it a couple weeks. I would say that if a trade is to be made, it will be after I believe the trade deadline is week 8, right? If I'm not mistaken.
November 4th, yeah. So right around there.
Okay, so perfect. Okay, that matches my timeline. In my opinion, if a trade is to be made, it will be after the Jaguars game when they're in London because the Rams have to fly out to Baltimore this week. They're going to spend the week in Baltimore and then they're going to go to London. And that kind of week would give them the opportunity to bring somebody in and then teach them exactly what they need to do with having 2 weeks of preparation before the next contest. So I don't think there's going to be a trade talk immediately. So the current cornerback room has 2 more games to make their best impression. Well, first off, shout out to my guy Nate Atkins, phenomenal writer over at The Athletic, great dude. What I got from McVay's statement was this: we need to look at everything, and I'm not exactly thinking that's straight up personnel change. That could also be lineup changes. That could be structural changes, things of that nature. So I'm pumping the brakes on an addition for right now because if an addition was to be made, I figured it would have been done with Ahkello Witherspoon without injury. Instead, they brought in Trey Brown, who's been a member of the special teams. My opinion, I want Stephon Gilmore. Free agent, should be affordable. The narrative of course, Gilmore preventing McVay from winning his first Super Bowl, McVay preventing Gilmore from winning a Super Bowl last season with the Vikings. They unite so both of them can win their second Super Bowl. La di da da. It'll be heaven for a sports writer. I also like Gilmore because he's a structurally sound player. The Rams don't need to rely on him every single play. Like he'll be there for the big ones. They have a strong rotation already, so whatever snaps he might put in, they can extend that 3-man to a 4-man if the ratio is roughly the same. If you only want Stephon Diggs out there for the big time plays or whatever it works out to, and Belichick trained but has that ruggedness from his time in Buffalo, understands different systems, intelligent. What more could you want from him? What I think is gonna happen. What I think is gonna happen is if if they pick up a cornerback, it will be one from the AFC North. I think it's probably going to come down to either Denzel Ward or Cam Taylor Britt if they go out and trade for a corner. But in the same breath, I don't think that they want to waste any of the first round picks. So they would have to get good value for one of those players.
Yeah, a guy I follow does a fantastic Substack, Oliver Connolly, the read optional, fantastic follow on Substack for sure. He was teasing that maybe they are in the FM picks era still, and they're going to swing big for a guy like Sauce Gardner, who's on the 0-5 Jets, who are going through yet another rebuild and maybe going to end up another 3 years before they're relevant at all. That would take a lot of picks to unmoor that guy, but kind of a fun one to consider. That would be that Jalen Ramsey 2.0. I'm not saying it's happening. I think they should make the phone call and see what the cost is, just to see what that is. But I like the Stephon Gilmore. I kind of banging the table for him the last couple of years, even though at his advanced age, which he's still like a decade younger than me, still playing some good ball, still has all those wily veteran moves and just enough juice to kind of keep up with all these wide receivers. And I think it would be a good fit, especially within a young defense, and good size too. They've just lacked that ability without Akillo to really man up against some of these bigger guys. We all know what happened with AJ Brown in that game. So yeah, any parting thoughts on this Rams team heading into what should be a pretty critical and desperate Ravens game?
Yeah. So first of all, I never got a chance to touch on Emmanuel Forbes. I think that you hit it when you talked about Taylor Witherspoon. When Forbes and Witherspoon were on the field together, Forbes looked calm, he looked confident because Taylor was taking on some of those bigger physical threats. However, they had to match it up. And then Forbes was able to be comfortable in his role with a safety over the top, playing strong Rams defense. And with that being gone, I think that he's been elevated to a role that he's not comfortable in, and that has severely harmed his initial development. But that's just my take on Emmanuel Forbes. When it comes to the rest of the team, I would love to see an addition like Sauce Gardner. I mean, for me, that'd be fun to talk to Sauce Gardner every day, write about him, watch how he works, and then, of course, watch how he performs on game day. The problem with that trade is, one, you're definitely going to have to trade at least one of your first for him, if not both, depending on what the Jets want. They have a brand new head coach there who's defensive minded, which is also going to hurt, the ability to acquire Gardner. And then the other aspect is the massive extension that he signed, being that the 2023 class with Byron Young and Colby Turner, they're about to enter their first window of extensions. And then you also have guys like Quinton Leach and Nate Ladman who have deals who have deals expiring at the end of the season. And of course, how all that kind of money works out. My last parting thought about this team is that I think that this loss had to happen. This team has been flying way close to the sun since the start of the season. They got lucky against the Texans. They got lucky against the Titans, and they definitely got lucky against the Colts, with Adonai Mitchell giving up 14 points of his own. This is the exact type of game that is going to, I think, help them blend more as a unit and just play more complementary football. Because there's times when the defense is spectacular and the offense isn't there. But then by the time the offense gets in the fourth quarter, the defense is all tired and everything, and they presented all their unique looks, so the other opposing offense is picking them apart. This is good. I think he's going to lock in. They're going to be much stronger in the first half. I think they're going to be able to cruise to a lot more victories in the second half than we're initially expecting.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see where they are heading into the bye. Should still have a positive record, but that's always been a big point of transition for McVay. And to your point about Akillo being out, I also think that it changed how the safeties were able to play. Where I feel like Jalen McCullough and Cam Kinchins were able to kind of free range a little bit, and just kind of ball hawk, which is what they're both really fantastic at. So I think that changed a bit as well. Some of the math changes that happened when Akillo went out. Tell the folks how they can find you and read you and follow you and all that good stuff.
Of course. So I want to say thank you so much for having me on, my man. This was a lot of fun. Thank you so much for everyone that's listening. You can find me on Twitter at Brock Vierra, BrockVierra. And for my work, you can check us out at Los Angeles Rams on SI. That's the website, and that's also our handle for Twitter and Facebook, or you can look us up, Los Angeles Rams Insider on SI. Thank you, guys.
Yeah, you bet. Thanks, guys, for tuning in, listening to all this. He's fantastic. Follow him. You guys know where to find us, Rams LAFB, across all channels, LAFBnetwork.com. Go click on some stuff. Subscribe if you're not yet. We're so close to the 2,000. We wanted to get there before the season. Didn't happen, but really appreciate it. Definitely tell your friends about us. It's the best way to help us grow. And go check out Sleeper Fantasy. Download that. Rams LAFB, one word. Go get that. Have some fun playing some daily fantasy. Until next time, we'll see you soon.